Okay, I'm going to try to hammer out at least 3 pages of Michel Foucault's Archeology of Knowledge, taken back up here at page 23, bottom of the page. The problems raised by the oeuvre are even more difficult. Yet at first sight, what could be more simple? A collection of texts that can be designated by the sign of a proper name. But this designation, even leaving to one side problems of attribution, is not a homogeneous function. Does the name of an author designate in the same way a text that he has published under his name? A text that he has presented under a pseudonym? Another found after his death in the form of an unfinished draft, and another that is merely a collection of jottings, a notebook. The establishment of a complete oeuvre presupposes a number of choices that are difficult to justify or even to formulate. Is it enough to add to the texts published by the author those that he intended for publication but which remained unfinished by the fact of his death? Should one also include all his sketches and first drafts with all their corrections and crossings out? Should one add sketches that he himself abandoned, and what status should be given to letters, notes, reported conversations, transcriptions of what he said made by those present at the time? In short, to that vast mass of verbal traces left by those present at the time. Okay, wait, let me go back. And what status should be given to the letters, notes, reported conversations, transcriptions of what he said made by those present at the time? In short, to that vast mass of verbal traces left by an individual at his death, and which speak in an endless confusion so many different languages. In any case, the name Mallarmé does not refer in the same way to his themes. Translation exercises from French into English, his translations of Edgar Allan Poe, his poems, and his replies to questionnaires. Similarly, the same relation does not exist between the name Nietzsche on the one hand and the youthful autobiographies, the scholastic dissertations, the philological articles, Zarathustra, Ecce Homo, the letters, the last postcard signed Dionysus or Kaiser Nietzsche, and the innumerable notebooks with their jumble of laundry bills and sketches for aphorisms. In fact, if one speaks so undiscriminately and unreflectingly of an author's oeuvre, it is because one imagines it to be defined by a certain expressive function. One is admitting that there must be a level, as deep as it is necessary to imagine it, at which the oeuvre emerges. In all its fragments, even the smallest, most inessential ones, as the expression of the thought, the experience, the imagination, or the unconscious of the author, or indeed of the historical determinations that operate upon him. But it is at once apparent that such a unity, far from being given immediately, is the result of an operation, that this operation is interpretive, since it deciphers in the text the transcription of something that is both conceals and manifests, and that the operation that determines the opus in its unity and consequently the oeuvre itself will not be the same in the case of the author of Le Théâtre et son double, Artaud, and the author of the Tractatus, Wittgenstein. And, therefore one speaks of an oeuvre. In each case, one is using the word in a different sense. Okay, the oeuvre can be regarded neither as an immediate unity, nor as a certain unity, nor as a homogeneous unity. One last precaution must be taken to disconnect the unquestioned continuities by which we organize in advance the discourse that we are to analyze. We must renounce two linked but opposite themes. So I'm trying to sit more because, as Papa would call it from the army, I've been in a dying cockroach position quite a lot lately. Okay, I'm going to read some more of this. Okay, so we're taking up top of page 25, new paragraph starting here. One last precaution must be taken to disconnect the unquestioned continuities by which we organize in advance the discourse that we are to analyze. We must renounce two linked but opposite themes. The first involves a wish that it should never be possible to assign in the order of discourse the eruption of a real event. That beyond any apparent beginning there is always a secret origin, so secret and so fundamental that it can never be quite grasped in itself. Thus, one is led inevitably through the naivety of chronologies towards an ever-receding point that is never itself present in any history. This point merely its own void, and from that point all beginnings can never be more than recommencements or occultation in one and the same gesture, this and that. To do this, theme is connected another according to which all manifest discourse is secretly based on an already said, and that this already said is not merely a phrase that has already been spoken or a text that has already been written, but a never said, an incorporeal discourse, a voice as silent as a breath, a writing that is merely the hollow of its own mark. It is supposed, therefore, that everything that is formulated in discourse was already articulated in that semi-silence that precedes it, which continues to run obstinately beneath it, but which it covers and silences. The manifest discourse, therefore, is really no more than the repressive presence of what it does not say. And this not said is a hollow that undermines from within all that is said. The first theme sees the historical analysis of discourse in the quest for and the repetition of an origin that eludes all historical determination. The second sees it as the interpretation of hearing of an already said, that is at the same time a not said. We must renounce all those themes whose function is to ensure the infinite continuity of discourse and its secret presence to itself in the interplay of a constantly recurring absence. We must be ready to receive every moment of discourse in its sudden eruption, in that punctuality in which it appears, and in that temporal dispersion that enables it to be repeated, known, forgotten, transformed, utterly erased, and hidden far from all view in the dust of books. Discourse must not be referred to the distant presence of the origin, but treated as and when it occurs. These pre-existing forms of continuity, all these syntheses that are accepted without question, must remain in suspense. They must not be rejected definitively, of course, but the tranquility with which they are accepted must be disturbed. We must show that they do not come about of themselves, but are always the result of a construction, the rules of which must be known, and the justifications of which must be scrutinized. We must define in what conditions and in view of which analysis certain of them are legitimate, and we must indicate which of them can never be accepted in any circumstances. It may be, for example, that the notions of influence or evolution belong to a criticism that puts them for the foreseeable future out of use. But need we dispense forever with the oeuvre, the book, or even such unities as science or literature? Should we regard them as illusions, illegitimate constructions, or ill-acquired results? Should we never make use of them, even as temporary support, and never provide them with a definition? What we must do, in fact, is to tear away from them their virtual self-evidence and to free the problems that they pose, to recognize that they are not tranquil locus on the basis of which other questions concerning their structure, coherence, systematicity, transformations may be posed, but that they themselves pose a whole cluster of questions. What are they? How can they be defined or limited? What distinct types of laws can they obey? What articulation are they capable of? What subgroups can they give rise to? What specific phenomena do they reveal in the field of discourse? We must recognize that they may not, in the last resort, be what they seem at first sight. In short, that they require a theory, and that this theory cannot be constructed unless the field of the facts of discourse on the basis of which those facts are built up appears in its non-synthetic purity.